After a brief introduction to lists, again, I will continue with more examples. A list in Python is used to keep more than one data. It can have either 0 data or 10 data or 1000 data. It doesn't matter. It depends on how many data you put in a list. How a list is created? A list is created by using either the square bracket notation. All the elements are put into square brackets, or you can also use the list function. The list function gives you a list. If there is no parameter, it gives you an empty list. If you don't put anything between open square bracket and close square bracket, you get an empty list. Or you can also have more than one values inside the square brackets. If we use this, then our list will contain 4 elements. The first element will have the value 2. The value of the second element will be 7, then 4, and then 6. When I print them, it will print something like this. Here in that part of the lecture notes, there is about some examples about reference. If you have a list, then if you assign that list to another variable, here I have a list named A, sorry. Then it will not create a new list, okay? There will be only one single list, which will be referred by both A and B. A is a list. A list is created, which contains those 4 values. And then when I assign A to B, then B will also refer to the same and one single list. Here, what I'm doing, the append method is used to add elements to the end of a list. So to the end of this list, I'm appending 5. And when I print here, you see that A.append 5, append 5 to the end of the list A, but I am printing B, the other supposed list. But when I do this, I see that here I'm printing A and I'm printing B. When I print A and B, since they are at the beginning same, it seems same. We see these two twice. Okay, print A and print B are printed, and the first 2 lines are about those. When we append 5 to A and print B, we see that here we have that line produced by this line 17. We see 5 at the end of B as well. And here we are appending 8 to the end of B, but we are printing A. And it is still, you see that in A, the 8 is also exists. So what does this mean? Here, A and B are one single list. We created one list. When we assign a list to another variable, then it doesn't create a new list, but both variables A and B here in this example refers to one single list. If I want to create a new list, then what I have to do, I have a copy method. In this case, it will be 2 different lists. I have the A here. A.copy creates a new list from the elements of A. Therefore, here B will be another list. But if I just have this, it is not 2 different lists. It is only one single list with 2 different names. Okay. So this part is about that reference, etc. I want to clarify this. That's why I'm giving this example. Now let's come back to our lists. Every element of the list are indexed. We can access the elements of a list by using indexes, and the indexes starts from 0. The index value of the first element is 0. So if I have an array, a list of 10 elements, the first element's index is 0. Therefore, the last element, the index of the last element in a list of 10 elements will be 9. Okay, one less than the length of the list. How do I get the size of the length of a list? If I just print here, for example, I can have, for example, n is equal to the len method is used to get the number of elements in a list. If I print n, I will see that there are 6 elements in the list. Okay. So the len method, the len function is used to get the number of elements in a list. The same way, the len method can be used with a string to get the number of characters. Therefore, the len method has several purposes. You can get the number of characters in a string, or you can get the number of elements in a list. If I want to access and print individual elements, for example, or use print individual elements, for example, x is equal to array with index 2. What is the index 2? This is index 0, index 1, index 2. The element with index 2 has the value 4. Okay. The indexes start with 0. Therefore, the index of the first element is 0. The index of the second element is 1. The index of the third element is 2. So when I do something like that, x is equal to a with index 2, I am getting the third element. And like the strings, if I want to get the last element, the indexes are starting from -1. The index -1 is used. Come on, I don't know how it happens, those icons. So -1, index -1 is the index of the last element. If I want to get the element the second element from the last, or the fourth element from the end. What is the fourth element from the end? The last element is -1, the second from the end, -2, -3, -4. Therefore, I will say something like a -4. Okay, the fourth element from the end is this one. Which is here 8. Of course, I didn't print q. If I print q, what will be the value of q? The fourth element from the end will be 1, 2, 3, 4. The value will be also 4. Okay. So this is about indexing. We can use negative indexes to index elements from the end of the list, starting with -1 as last element. How can I modify an element in a list? I can use indexing again. Assume that I want to modify the second element. From 7, I want to change it to 72, for example. So what I do, I say a index 1 refers to the second element is equal to, for example, 72. When I print a again, I will see that the second element will not be 7 anymore. It will be 72. As we see it here. So contrary to strings, by using indexing, we can modify list elements. In a string, you cannot modify the characters of a string using indexing. If a is a string, you cannot, for example, assume that I have s is equal to a string. I can print, for example, access element s with index 4. I can do that. What will be for f, g, b, r, b? This second b is that character. I will get b, but I cannot modify this b with another character. I cannot do this. S with index 4 is equal to character t, for example. If I try to do that, I'll get an error because strings are immutable by indexing or slicing. But indexes are not like that. Here I get an error, okay? But the same thing is not valid for lists. I can modify a list element by indexing. This is one of the primary differences between indexing strings and indexing lists. For strings, it is not possible. For arrays, it is natural. How do I add new elements? We have seen that by using the append method, we add new elements to the end of the list. A list is an ordered sequence of values. So the first element has index 0, then index 1, index 2, etc. Here I can also have some duplicates. So assume that I have another 7 here, and 9, 3, 5, and another 7, etc. So the same values may repeat. It doesn't matter. For me, this is a list, and it has 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 values, and each value has some indexes, specific indexes, index 0, index 1, index 2, etc. By chance, the same value may repeat in several elements. It doesn't matter. Assume that this is the list of grades of students in an exam. More than 2 students can have the same exam grade, okay? 82, 77, 64, 87, and again 77, etc. Assume that these are the exam grades, the quiz 1 grades of the class. So since 2 students may have the same grade, it's quite logical to have multiple values in a list. Duplicate values in a list. Deleting elements. How do I delete an element from the list? Let's print Q. Let's do that. I want to delete, for example, this 9. What is its index? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to delete that one. So what I will do, delete A with index 4. And when I print, let's do this, Control C, V. Print A, delete 4, and print A again. Let's remove the other stuff. Let's run this. Here I have my list, okay? And as you see, the 9 is deleted. So this moved 1 position back, and all the rest is moved 1 position back, because this element is deleted. Therefore, this 3 has now not index 5, but index 4. 5 has not index 6, but index 5, etc., etc. So you can delete an element by using index. Also, you can delete multiple elements with slicing, but I will come to this later on. What functions that can I use with lists? The len function, I already told, returns the number of elements in a list, number of items or elements in a list. List function can be used to create a list. Let's do it here. Q is equal to list. Here I have to use a sequence. For example, I can use range function, range 5. What range 5 produce? The range 5 will produce values from 0 to 4. But I want to put those values in a list. So in order to do that, I use the list function call with a parameter, and the parameter is a range function call. Range function call will produce values from 0 to 4, and I will put those elements with list. I will convert that sequence to a list with a list function call, and when I print Q, I will have the values from 0 to 4 in a list. Okay. So list function is used to create a list from the elements of a range or a tuple. What is max? The max is used to get the maximum value in a list. By the way, I have to tell you that a list may contain not only values of the same data type, but different data type. For example, I can have 9.65 or 7 point blah, blah, blah. I have some integers and some floats here. No problem. The program will run correctly. I can even have some strings, for example. Let's assume that I have a string here. I can have no problem. So a list in Python may have a mixture of different data types. Okay. There is no problem with that. But if you have, for example, numbers and strings, you cannot find the max. In order to find the maximum, the minimum, and the sum, the list must contain all the same data types. Okay. For some, they have to contain numbers. Okay. But for max and min, they may be all strings or all numbers. If I don't have this, for example, I can then, let's go remove this. If I can do something like that, print, for example, max of A, or even I can do it like that, or I can have is equal to max of A and print That will be the same thing anyway. And Control C, let's copy this, and and for example, for minimum, and SM for sum, and minimum and sum, for example. So I have the maximum, which is 87. Yeah, 87 is the maximum value here. The smallest value is 3. Okay. And it seems that the sum of these values is that number. Attention. If you use, for example, max here, max is a function name, but I also used max as a variable name. If I do this, and if later on for another list, I try to use, for example, x is equal to max of list q, I will have a problem. Okay. If I do this here, of course, doesn't exist. I can print max. If I do that, now here I have a problem. Why? Because max has two different things. Here it was a function, but I used a variable with the function name. Then I will have a problem here later on. So please don't use max, min, and sum as variable names. Use something else. For example, max1. Okay, no problem. Then my program will run correct. Okay, I will not get any problem. Print x. Let's see if it works. Yeah, 4 is the maximum of this list. No problem here. So if you are using some functions like list or max or min or sum, don't use those names as variables. Don't, for example, say list is equal to, don't do something like that, okay? Because list is a function name. If you do this, you will not be able to use the list function call anymore in your program. So just put here either 1 or A or whatever. Okay, change the name slightly. Don't use the same name as function names. What is sorted? Sorted returns a copy of the list where the items are sorted in ascending order, in increasing order. So assume that I have my S list, sorted list is equal to sorted A. Here is my A, okay? My A list. If I do this, and if I print S list, then what I will get, I will get a new list. It is sorted 3, 6, 9 point, blah, blah, 64, 77, 77, plot something, 82, 87. All values are sorted in ascending order. So by using max, I can get the maximum value in a list. Let me do one more thing about that. Assume that I have names or fruits. I have a list of fruits. Apple, let's start with banana. Apricots. Apple. And let's say cherry. I have a list of strings. And if I want to have, for example, FF is equal to sorted fruits. And if I print FF, what I will get, those strings will be sorted lexically. Apple, apricot, banana, cherry, A, app, P, and A, app, R, B, and C, etc. They are sorted in ascending order. So the, or even I can, for example, say print max of fruits. What is max of fruits? It is the string which is last in lexical order. So it is cherry. Let's first, after cherry, let's put something else, or let's move the apple to after cherry. Okay. And let's print the fruits here first. Print fruits. Here is my fruits list. Banana has index 0, apricot has index 1, index 2, index 3. Here I have the sorted fruits in FF. And here I get the maximum. What is the maximum? The last one, or the in lexical greatest string is cherry. C is more bigger than A or B, the first character. So it is the last in the sequence. So I can use max with strings as well. And similarly min with strings as well. Then I will have apple here, which is the first when it is sorted. So max and min can also be used with lists of strings, and sorted is used to get a copy of the string in which the elements are sorted in ascending order. What are the operators with lists? There are two basic operators. The plus operator to concatenate two lists and get a new list, and multiplication operator to repeat the elements of a list. Let's go here. Let's continue with some new lists. A is equal to, let's create a new list, 7, 4, 8, 2, and 6, for example. And let's have B list, which contains 2, 9, 3, and 7. If I just create a list C is equal to A plus B, what will happen? It will take all elements of A, and after that, it will append all elements of B. So it will be 7, 4, 8, 2, 6, 2, 9, 3, 7, all put together. So if I just print C, I will see that here. Okay. First, the elements of A, followed by the elements of B. It will create a new list by concatenating two elements. I can have, for example, B is equal to another list. No. And let's say here something. Okay. If I put here, of course, plus D, then what is wrong? Of course, I forgot this. Yeah. So my list has now, I'm concatenating 3 lists. Okay. What is asterisk? It is to repeat the elements of a list. If I have, for example, Q is equal to A multiplied by 2, the values of A will be repeated twice. 74826 followed by 74826 again. And let's print Q here. Here I see that this is A, which is repeated, all elements are repeated twice. Okay. If I have, instead of 2, I have 7, all elements will be repeated 7 times. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times they are repeated. Okay. I can also have, for example, list multiplied by an integer number or integer number multiplied by list. Both are valid. I can have the integer multiplication before or after the multiplication operator. Now I have the elements of A repeated 4 times. If you want to create a list which contains, for example, 10 times 7, how do you do that? If I put here 7, what will be Q? 4 times 7 is 28. But if I just put here this 4 times 7, now I will get that. Okay. Of course, in order to create a list which contains the same values, I have to create a list which contains it once and multiply with some number to duplicate it in the list. In operator, if I have a list, let's create a list here, list of range values from, let's say, 10 to 21, with increasing 20. What this range function call will produce? It will produce values starting from 10, every time increase by 2, up to excluding 21. So the values that will be produced here will be 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18, and 20. Okay? These values will be produced by this range function call. And with list, I am putting those values in a list. Okay? Range produces just some values. A sequence of values are produced, but list function is used to create a list. If I don't put this, if I just do this, it will not create a list. Okay? Range function is just a sequence of numbers. It is not a list. Therefore, I have to put here the list function call. And as a parameter, I need to use a range function to produce a list which contains these values. Now, I want to print those values. There are several ways. One is the for loop, get a value val in Q. If I have a for loop in this format, after in, I have a list. What will happen? It will take every element of the list, put into this variable, and repeat the for loop. So if I had just, for example, have print val, it will print all the values. If I want, for example, to find the sum of values in a list, sum 1, of course, equal 0, what I can do, I can write here sum 1 is equal plus equal 12. Print. Of course, we can use the sum function call to get the sum of values. but this is also a quite easy way of finding the sum. Here, what I'm doing, I'm getting every element of the list Q into this variable val, and I'm printing. Okay. Now assume that I want to print only the values that are divisible by 3. Let's run this. Here it will be printing. Okay. Those values are printed. And someone which is 90 is printed at that. What I will do, here I will have if val is divisible or modulus 3 equals 0, it means that it is divisible by 3. Okay. Then in that case, I will print val. Is 10 divisible by 3? No. 12? Yes, it will print 12. 14 divisible by 3? No. 16? No. 18? Yes, it will print 18. So if I want to process all the elements of a list, I use a for loop in which I use a variable to get the elements from the list, and after in, I use the list name. Then each element will be taken one by one, and the body of the loop will repeat for each element of the list stored into the variable in the for loop. Similarly, if I want to get the sum of values divisible by 3, what I will do, I will just copy this here and then do that. Here we are finding the sum of all values in the list which are divisible by 3, for example. So 12 plus 18 is 30. And here I have the results. This is in operator with for loops. Now, I have we also have an in operator used in the if statements or in logical expression. If 17 in Q. If I have something like this, an if statement which has an in and operator plus a list, what it does, it checks if this value exists in the list or not. Is 17 part of the list? No. I'll get false for this expression. But if I have, for example, 16 is an element of the list Q? Yes. Therefore, I will get true for this expression. Okay. So in order to check if a value exists in a list or not, we can use the in operator. Let's say n is equal to 16. If n in Q, we can do something here. Okay. So this will be true if the value of n exists as an element in the list Q. This is the in operator here is the membership operator. Okay, remember that in operator, if used in a logical expression, since if is followed with a logical expression, in that case, the in operator is a membership operator, and it checks if the previous value exists in the subsequent list. Here we have an example. We have a list. We have a variable a. If a in fruits is cherry exists in the list, yes. Therefore, this will be true, and it will execute the if part. Otherwise, if I had, for example, cherry 2, is there any cherry 2 string inside the list? No. This will be false. A in fruits will be false, and it will go and execute the else part. List slicing. The list slicing is quite similar to slicing strings. Let's create a string, a list. Let's remove this, or let's go here. Let's use a list function called with a range. Let's create a list which contains values from 20 to 1. So start with 20, go up to 0 with -1 at a time. So this will create a list which will contain values 20, 19, 18, 17 up to 1. As we know, in range function, the second parameter is excluded. So if I print A, I will see that it will contain values from 20 to 1. Okay. Now, I want to slice this. How do I slice? Let's print some examples. A, again, we need to put here at least one column. Slice is starting from index 4 up to excluding index 8. So this will give me a new list which will contain the values, or let's take this from here, x, and let's say b is equal to this. A slicing will give us a new list of the selected elements. This will select elements starting from index 4 up to and including index 7. Index 8 is excluded. So if I have print B, I will have index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It will start with 16. It will take 4 elements, index 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. Or I can have, for example, if I want to get the last 4 elements, -4 and nothing, if the second parameter is empty, it means go to the till the end of the list. Okay. So, sorry. Here I have 4 elements. The index of the last element is -1. Index of the second from last is -2, -3, -4. So if I have this -4 column nothing, it will take the last 4 elements. Here I have the last 4 elements. Let's change this. 10 to 101, increased by 10. So you will guess that it will be 10, 20, 30, blah, 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 these elements. And the last 4 elements are these elements. If I have the first one empty, then it means starts from the first element, the index with 0. And up to 5 means that start from the beginning and go up to the index 5 excluded. So take index element with index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it will take the first 5 numbers from the list. Okay. Or if I can also have 2 columns, therefore 3 parameters. Start from 5, go to the, let's make this 201 with 20 elements. From this to 9 with increasing 2. So what does this mean? Start with element index 4. Every time increase the index by 2. So which indexes will be taken? Index 4, then 6, and then 8. Next one is 10, which is equal or greater than 9. So those elements, the elements with index 4, 6, and 8 will be taken. Index 4 is 50. Index 6 is 70. Index 8 is 90. Okay. Here I can have a negative value. In that case, if I have a negative value, it will go backwards. So the first parameter have to be greater than the second parameter. Start with 14. Every time increase by 12, -2. So decrease by 2. So the first index will be 14. -2. The next index will be 12. Then 10. Then 8 will be beyond 9. Okay. even if I have here 8, it will not be taken. The second is always excluded. So the next one would be normally 8, but since 8 is here, it will be excluded. Therefore, it will only take the element with index 14, 12, and 10, which are those values. Let's make this 0. So the values will be just 10 more than 10 times the indexes. Okay. So the slicing is exactly same, almost exactly same with slicing strings, with one major difference that I will explain in a few minutes after just explaining this. If I want to get all elements with even indexes, what I will do, that 2. If I don't put anything here and anything here, and if the increment is positive, then it means start from the beginning, go to the end, get everything, but increase the indexes by 2. So what will be the indexes? 0, 2, 4, 6, blah 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 blah. Okay, get all even indexes, because here I have the first parameter is nothing, which means start of the list. The second parameter is nothing, so it means go to the end of the list and increase every time by 2. Start with index 0, increase by 2 every time, and get all the elements with those indexes. And here I see that it will only get 0, 20, 40, blah blah. It gets only the even indexed elements. How do I get odd indexed elements, which are 1, 3, 5, 7, blah blah? Then start with 1. The start value is here. Every time increase by 2. And when this is empty, it will jump 2 at a time, and it will get all elements. So 10, 30, 50, etc. will be taken. And we'll create a new list. Now, the difference between slicing strings and integer lists is here. We can modify a list using slicing. So what I will do, let's say strings C is equal to, I will just do something here. What I do, A slicing, start from the beginning to the 5th element, to the index 5. So what does it mean? Start with index 0, go to up to index 5, excluded. So index 4 will be included. Index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But replace that part with a new list. 70, 87, 54. I just put 2 values. So just remove the first 5 elements, index 0 to index 4. Replace these elements with that list. And let's print A again. This is now my new list. The first 0 to 40 are replaced with another list, and the rest of the list, of course, unchanged, because it is outside this slicing. What did we do? We just specified a part of the list, and that part is replaced with another list. So this part, which is that slicing, is replaced with these values. Okay. So you cannot do this with strings. You can do this with lists. This is how Python works. Is this understood? Strangely, let's remove this for the time being. I will change this a little bit. replace all odd index elements. 1 blah blah 2 is elements with odd indexes, okay? And I want to replace those. Now it jumps 10, 30, 50, okay? But here I'm just putting, for example, let's say these values. What will happen? I have an error. Why? Because here I am jumping 2 at a time, and it will take this element and this element and this element. There are holes in the list, okay? I'm just jumping about the elements. How many elements are there in the list? My list has elements from 0 to 200, so there are 21 elements, okay? Since there are 21 elements, how many odd index elements are there? There are 10 odd index elements. If I put here, for example, this multiplied by 5, this list is a list of 2 elements. Multiplied by 5, I have a list of 10 elements, and this slicing slices 10 elements. And since it is jumping inside the list, I have to fill every single part. Here it is different. The previous example was different because I have a consecutive area, and that consecutive area was replaced with a smaller or bigger list. This is possible. But if I jump over elements, take this one, then this one, then this one, etc., and then there are other elements between, then the replaced list has to have the same number of elements as the sliced part. Okay. I will do the same thing again. Assume that I want to replace the first 4 elements with something else. Let's do it again. A, start from 0 to 5. So 5 elements indexed with 0 up to index 4 is equal to 5,9. I just replaced this. Print A. Here I have a consecutive area. Replace those elements with 5 and 9. So I have 5 and 9. Of course, let's. What is this? Of course, this is replaced. I have to do it again. Now it will work fine. Revert it back to the original. Here, 0 to 40 are replaced with 5 and 9 because these are consecutive elements. And the rest of the list just preserves because it is outside this slicing. That part, 0 to 4, is replaced with that part, and the rest is unchanged. Here I set the list again to its original state. Here I'm jumping over elements. So I take the element with index 1, then 3, with then 5, etc. Since there are 21 elements, there are 0 to 20. The even indexed elements are 11, but odd indexed elements are 10. Okay. Here I have 21 elements. So indexes are start 0, 1, 2, up to 21. Sorry. These are indexes, okay? Since there are 21 elements, the last index is 20, 0, 2, etc. There are 11 even indexes, and there are 10 odd indexes up to 90. So this slicing refers to element with index 1, index 3, up to index 19. There are 10 elements. So I'm replacing those 10 elements with other 10 elements. Okay, this 87, 54, 87, 54 are repeated 5 times. So here on the right-hand side of this equal operator, I have a list of 10 elements. Those 10 elements are replacing the elements selected from the list. Here I see 8754, 8754, etc. Okay. If I replace a sliced list which has some increment rather not equal to 1, because here this is equivalent to 1. Okay. If you don't put anything, the third parameter is missing, then it means it is the usual increment 1. If the increment is not 1, then the assigned part has to be equal in size to the sliced part. I hope this is not too complicated. Even if you understood this, then it means that you understood lists quite well. Okay, let's give a break of 2 minutes, and then I will continue after this with some methods. Okay, 2 minutes break. Okay, now let's continue our lecture with methods. We have learned the append method. With append, we can add a new element to the end of a list, A, or let's say B dot append, for example, 12. What will happen? To the end of the list B, the value 12 will be appended. Print B. 12 is appended to the end. So the append is a basic method to add a new element to the end of a list. But I want to append to add 12 not to the end, but to some place inside the list. So in that case, if assume that I want to add 12 before 6, okay, I want to put it here. What is the position of this? It is index 2, index 0, index 1, index 2. In that case, instead of appending, I use insert. It said, sorry. if I want to insert an element inside a list, I have to give two parameters. The first parameter will be index, the position. So I want to insert 12 to index 2. If I do this, I will see that 12 is put to position 2, index 2, and all the rest are moved forward. Okay. So the difference between append and insert is that append puts the value to the end of the list. In insert, I specify an index, and that value is inserted to that index. Okay, this is the basic difference between insert and append. Let's put here b dot append. Let's say, for example, 40. Then 40 is appended to the end. Print b. 40 is added to the end, and 12 is inserted to index position 2. Extend. If I have two different lists, and if I extend one list with another list, for example, I have my A and I have my B. Now, this one, I want to add all the elements of B to the end of A, not a single value, but a whole list. So in that case, what I do, A dot extend with elements of B. Print A will be modified. Then blah, 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 100, and then continues with the elements of B. Okay, let's make this like this. So here is my B, the last version of B. Here is my A. A extend B will append all the elements of B to the end of A, and I will get this new list. A will be modified like that. Okay. Appends the items in sequence to the end of the list. Instead of B, assume that I want to append to the end of this the values generated by a range. Range. Oops, sorry. Let's put here range. I want to put which values, for example, 2, 4, 6, 8. Start from 2, go up to 9, increasing 2. Okay. So range produces the values, this range 2, 9, 2 will produce values 2, 4, 6, 8. Those 4 values will be added to the end of A. Okay. So here I can have either another list or I can have a sequence like range function call. Both are possible. Count. Let's make this what count do? Count just counts how many times a value occurs in a list. Let's create another list. S is equal to, let's have here, for example, 5, 2, 4, 7, 2 again, 8, 6, 5 again, 2 again, and 8, and 4, for example. I want to find how many times 2 exist in the list. So let's say CNT is equal to S dot count the value 2 inside the list S. S is my list. Count finds how many times this value exists in the list. There are 3 times, so CNT will be 3. Okay. As you will see it here. Okay. So count method with a list is used to find the number of occurrences of a value in that list. See how it is used? You use the list name and then dot the count method with the parameter, the value to be counted in the list. Index. I want to find the index of the first occurrence of 2 in the list S. So let's say IDX is equal to S dot index 2. There are 2 here, 2 somewhere else, and somewhere else. There are 3 times. But the index method call will return the index of the first occurrence. What is the index of this 2, the first 2 in the list? It is 0. 5 has index 0, and 2 has index 1. So when I print this IDX, I'll get 1. As you see it here. Let's put some more values, 6 and 3, for example. Then the first occurrence of 2 has index 3, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Then I will have here 3 printed as this IDX. However, there is something, a case that has to be careful. Is there any 9 here? There is no 9. If you use a value which doesn't exist in the list, then you get an error. Okay. So the usage of index is not quite solid. Let's assume that I have, for example, variable n is equal to 9. I can use again here. Let's remove this n. Since 9 doesn't exist in the list, usage of s.index should be more controlled. How can I do that? If n in s, if it exists, then get the index. Okay, and then use it. Check if this value exists in the list. If it exists, then you can get its index. So this is a better way of getting index value. There is another version of index. Assume that n is 2. Okay. I don't want to get the index of the first occurrence, but index of the 2 starting from some position. Okay, starting from this position to the end of the list. What is the index of this? 6, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the index of this 6 here is 8. If I want to find the position of n starting from index 8, here I put the index value. Starting from index 8, what is the index of the first occurrence of n, which is 2? After this is index 8, index 9, index 10. Of course, let's move this here. Then I will get here 10. So I can search a value and find the index of a value in a list starting from an index position. Okay. Or I can even have, now let's say I can search a value in part of a thing. So starting from index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I want to find the first occurrence from here to there, for example. I can say start from 5 up to index 9. What is the first occurrence of 2? Okay. Find index of 2 starting from index 5 up to index 8. 9 is exclusive. It will find the index of this 2. Okay. Starting from 5 at index 6 we have 2. So here we have 3 versions of index. If we have only one parameter, it will find the index of the first occurrence of V in the list. If we have a beginning index, starting from this index, what is the index of the first occurrence of V? And if we have a beginning index and end index, what is the index of the first occurrence of V starting from the beginning index up to excluding the end index. There are three versions of index. Pop is just returns, get the last value and remove from the list. And pop with I returns the element with index I and removes from the list. Remove V just removes the first occurrence of value V from the list. Let's do it here. If I say S dot remove, for example, 2. Let's forget about this for the time being. Now there are 2 here, 2 here, and 2 here. What this will do, it will remove the first occurrence. So it will remove this 2 from list. Let's print the list again. On top, this part, okay. I have only that part in my program. So here, in order to clarify this, let's print S first. This is the original S. And after remove 2, it removed the first occurrence of 2. There are 3 occurrences. There is 1 here, 1 there, and 1 there. And it removed the first occurrence. The other occurrence of 2 remains. Okay. Remove just removes the first occurrence of the given value from this list. Copy returns a copy of the list. I will explain this. Clear will remove all items. If I say clear, of course, no parameter. Now my list is empty. It will empty the whole list. Reverse, it reverses the order of the elements in the list. Now the last element was 4, then 8, 2, 4, 8, 2. The list is reversed. Okay, it is simple. Reverse just reverses the order of elements in the list. What is sort? Sort sorts a list in ascending order. Here is my original list. When I sort the values, it will be 2, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, blah, 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 up to the biggest number. If I have reverse equal true, then it will sort in reverse order. 8, 8, 7, 6, 6, 6, 5, 5, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So these are the methods that I will explain to you. There are other list methods. There are more list methods than my lecture note contains, but these are the most important methods, and you are only responsible from these methods, these list methods in the course. So if you find other list methods in the internet or in books, in other Python books, you are not responsible from the other methods. Okay, these are the most important methods that is important for us, and we will use these methods. Any question about lists? So this is the there's a concept called comprehension. I will not explain this to you because the other sections are not explaining this. I will just do a brief introduction to nested lists, and I will continue with nested lists next week. A nested list has other lists as elements. Okay, here I have a list starting from square bracket and another square bracket here. Let's do it here. Let's remove everything there. I may have, for example, A is equal to a list, and every element of the list, this list is another list. So I have a list here, another list here, another list here, Let's put some values. Jane, 1974 and 174. This is, let's say, the name, birth year, and the height. Let's have another person. James, born in 1968 and has 180. The height is this one. Okay. Assume that we have this kind of lists. And again, another person, Bill, which has born in 1944 and which was 212. Okay. So this, now I have a nested list. I have a list in which every element is another list. Okay. How do I process these lists? I want to get the second element of the second list. So this says index 0. This is index 1, index 2. If I just, let's print first of all, print A with index 1, index 0, this says index 0, this says index 1. Let's see what will happen. Here I have the whole nested list. Here index 1 is this middle list. Okay. Now I want to get, for example, the height of the second element. What I will do, A1 is a list, but I want to get this value, 182, the second element or the third element of the second list. So here I cascade this. A1 is this list, and inside this list, James says index 0, 168 index 1, 182 index 2. So if I do this, it will print here 182. Okay. So if you have a nested list, the first index is the index of that inner list, and inside that inner list, you can index again to get an individual value from the list. Not too complex, simple. Every element of the original list is a list. So from that list, you can index again to get individual data inside the inner list. Okay. So you can process it like this. If I want to change this 182 to 184, what I will do is equal to 190, for example. Okay, I want to change this 182 to 190, and if I print the whole list again, I'll see that 182 is changed to 190. So I can change the individual values inside the inner list with two indexes. The first index is the whole list, all the inner list, and the second index is the index inside that list, index 0 in this list, index 1 in this list, and index 2 in that list. So I modified 182 to 190 by using double index. The first index is the index of the lists, inner lists, and the second index is the element index of the inner list. Is this understood? Okay. So using the nested lists, we can build matrices. How I will do that? Assume I have, for example, some three values here, 2, 5, and 4. Let's change this a little bit. And here I have another set of values, 0, 9, 6. Let's put here other values, 5, 8, and 2. Let's put one more. And let's put here 1, 8, and 3. Now I have a matrix, but it is represented as a nested list. Okay, the first row, the second row, the third row, and the fourth row. I can create a nested list in order to implement a matrix. But doing matrix manipulation like this is quite difficult. Although I have here some examples. For example, I want to add this and that. Here, there is a way of doing it with here. I will not explain this to you. I will consult, first of all, the other CS101 instructors. If they will explain matrices to their students, then next lecture, next week, I will explain to you these in more detail. Okay, I have to consult first the other instructors of CS101. If this is explained to other groups, then I will explain this to you. Otherwise, you will not be responsible from these matrix operations. Okay. Any questions about lists so far? Okay, if you don't have any question, then I can stop here because I think I went a little bit too fast. Next week, if necessary, if you request from me, I can repeat some ununderstood parts. If you have some difficulties with some parts of today's lecture, next week I can explain those parts in